Where are the two teachers?
Welcome to Room to Be, where it's time to get schooled.
We're talking about American foundations, the foundations of American government and politics. Today's lesson, the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights, those first 10 amendments added to the U.S. Constitution, were added to protect us, we the people, from a strong central government.
They are also added as a promise to those founders who were concerned that the central government under the Constitution could abuse the rights of individuals. So in order to get the Constitution ratified, it was a negotiated point that the new Congress would allow a Bill of Rights installed to protect our individual liberties.
In 1833, the Supreme Court in Barron v. Baltimore made it quite clear as to where and how these Bill of Rights can be applied. The first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution protect us from the national government. They did not apply to the states. But let's look at some of these amendments.
Well, you can remember that because the First Amendment starts with the 5 words, Congress shall make no law. Congress meaning the central government. And the First Amendment specifically protects your rights to expression and the right to free speech, protects your right to free press, the right to assemble, and also the right to petition, to ask your government to change. But then it also has religious protections as well.
Let's not forget those religious protections are twofold. We have what's called an Establishment Clause and a Free Exercise Clause. The Establishment Clause makes it quite clear that the national government cannot show preference to one religion or another. We cannot have an established church. But we the people also have the freedom to exercise in our own religious ways. But Andy, let's not forget that the First Amendment, we call it the preferred position. It is one of our most highly valued and sacred places to learn about what liberty means. It is the backbone of our democracy.
And really, in order to have a democracy, you need people speaking out, holding government accountable with the right to free press. You need a civil society with the right to assemble. And it really is the core protection we have to ensure this republic democracy.
Let's not forget the other 9 amendments, however, the Bill of Rights. The Second Amendment gives us the right to bear arms. This is where the Founding Fathers put into the original Constitution the right you and I have to own firearms.
Well,
Andy,
that's
very controversial.
often controversial because of the question of whether it protects our individual right to bear arms or whether it protects our right to bear arms if we're part of some state militia.
The Third Amendment protects us from quartering troops in peacetime. Andy, I can't think of one Supreme Court case where this came up, but it was very important to those citizens in the colonies back in 1787, which saw those British troops going up and down their alleys asking for a place to stay. Andy, protecting our liberty to be safe and secure in our own homes.
But plenty of Supreme Court cases about the Fourth Amendment, specifically our protection from unreasonable search and seizure, the idea that our homes are sacred, that in order for the government to come into our homes, it needs some kind of judicial warning, typically in the form of a search warrant. The idea that in order to get that search warrant, there needs to be probable cause, some kind of evidence that a crime has been committed in order for the government to come intrude on our privacy.
The Fifth Amendment is quite a doozer, a lot in there. And speaking of doozer, it contains the Due Process Clause. The Fifth Amendment guarantees you and I certain due process. It also talks about eminent domain. Andy, the government can take our property from us, but only if it's necessary, and they must give us fair market value. This is a critical provision that protects our property. It doesn't make us more vulnerable.
You can also plead the Fifth if you're under criminal investigation, which gives you the protection to remain silent, and your silence cannot be used against you by the government.
The Sixth Amendment protects us when we're going to court. Andy, we're protected to have a speedy trial. We're protected by having an attorney. The right to an attorney, a critical provision in the Sixth Amendment.
The Seventh Amendment deals with procedures in civil cases. Remember, our courts are divided into criminal courts and civil courts regarding litigation. The Seventh Amendment is about the process of civil litigation.
The Eighth Amendment protects us from cruel and unusual punishments. Highly debatable even to this day, but Andy, in the end, the Founding Fathers understood that cruel and unusual punishments Torture is not to be allowed in a free republic like ours.
The Ninth Amendment are the rights reserved to the people. And while you don't hear a lot about Ninth Amendment cases, cases involving the right to privacy, like Griswold versus Connecticut, Roe v. Wade, that's where the Ninth Amendment comes into play as to whether there is a guaranteed right to privacy mentioned in the Bill of Rights.
The 10th Amendment we call the Reserved Powers Amendment. The 10th Amendment assures that the states will continue to have certain powers that the national government cannot abuse. Andy, this is where federalism really is articulated. The division of power between national, state, and local governments is protected in our Bill of Rights. We call that the 10th Amendment. Speaking of calling these amendments something, we call them the Bill of Rights. If you don't know them very clearly, maybe they're William's rights to you. But maybe after being here in room 2B and learning about what these amendments actually mean, we can talk about them more familiarly. We call them Bill's rights. We're the two teachers, and you've been schooled in room 2B.
Where there's always room to be an informed citizen.